Good morning, LinkedIn. It is, what day is it? Tuesday. It's almost Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody's getting some time off. I know in the retail space, that is not always the easiest thing to do around this time. And some of you don't have a choice. So I am rooting for you if you guys are working over Black Friday chaos and then in through the end of Christmas. I've been there. But today we're actually going to be talking about some retail data. We're going to talk about some Lowe's point of sale data and normalizing it for population. I made some posts, I think last week or earlier this week. Well, it would have been last week on normalizing that data for population and how it can open a whole new world of like the ability to theorize and hypothesize around what's going on with your sales. And it just shows you a different lens. It's a tactic I use all the time. But I thought it'd be a good idea to do a video because lots of people do it wrong. There's a right way to do it. And the easy way is the wrong way. And so let's talk about what that is. So on the screen here, you're looking at Lowe's. This is real sales data for a home improvement product that's sold really across all home improvement retailers, Ace Hardware, they're in Walmart, they're all over the place. But we're picking out Lowe's here because I just read an article on them and it was top of mind. So you're looking at that. We've talked about this before, right? This is chaos. It's craziness. I can't make a decision on this, all these different dots, the red and the green and the yellow. It doesn't even matter what they are. It's crazy. You can't use it. So what happens a lot is analysts or sales, finance people will roll this up to the state level or whatever your geographic organization is, right? You may have like 4 or 6 geographies across the country that you like to roll things up by. Here we're looking at state, and the reason I'm showing you state is because this map, if you've ever seen your own point of sale data on a state map, it probably looks almost identical to this, regardless of what your product is. If you have national distribution, it probably looks very similar. Florida, Texas, California are always my largest states, right? Because there's the most stores there, and there's a lot of people there, and lots of sales activity. Now, what may be different for you is this Carolinas, Virginia area may or may not look like this. Pennsylvania, Ohio may or may not look like this, but what's consistent is Florida, Texas, and California. So you get this map, you ask for like some geographic breakdown of sales, you get this map, you look at it and say, oh, there's not really much I can do with this. It's just kind of nice to know. And what you should be doing, yes, this is important. You need to know this data, but what you should be doing is normalizing all of this for population. There's a couple ways to go about it. The way that is almost always used is we go out and find the population for all 50 states, and we use that in our math to determine my penetration number as an example. So I might take it by look at revenue per 1,000 people or per 10,000 people, or however you want to break it out. That's not the best way to do it. So here's why. So this here, we're just looking at Texas, okay? And you can see all the like scatterness of the stores as well as the concentration. So like Dallas, Houston, the Austin area has a strong concentration of Lowe's stores. They're all packed in there. The rest of Texas, there's like, I don't know, like maybe 10 stores spread out across the rest of Texas. But there's actually a lot of people, even though these aren't Dallas and Houston, of course, but there are still a lot of people that live out in these areas. They're just much more spread out. So if you're taking the entire state population, I don't really care about all of the people in the areas where I don't have a store, right? Even if you're doing this from an e-commerce perspective, even if you're rolling in all your e-commerce data, you should take into account the areas where people are actually purchasing your product, okay? So especially if I'm doing this, trying to understand retail locations and how to maximize sales there, I should only be concerned about the consumers who have the opportunity to purchase inside of a store. For this analysis, that's all we should be concerned about. So if I'm taking the total state population, I'm doing it wrong, right? The way to do this is how I do it. This is how the magnetic platform does it. Draw a 3-mile radius around every location and pull back the trade area population for that location and use that to sum up your state total number. Okay, it's going to give you a very different number than the total state population, and it'll vary by state. Okay, Very important. It's not easy to do, right? You've got to have some technology to get there. You've got to have the right processes. You've got to be able to process all that data. This is why Magnetic exists. This is what we do. And it doesn't matter if it's 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever you decide that trade area is, just look at that for your population number. Okay. So that's what we've done here. I've drawn a 3-mile radius around every Lowe's location. I pulled back daytime population for every Lowe's. Daytime population is very important because that will take into account how many people are in that trade area during the day. That will give you a lot of insight into the areas that are more like business centers, right? So the areas that are shopping centers where there's a Lowe's right in the middle of it, and there's not a lot of residential areas around it, especially in that 3-mile radius, right? So now you're getting all your workers into that number, your people traveling through the trade area. It's a much better representation of population, like your opportunity for people to buy, than just residential population. Okay. It kind of depends on your product. If you're doing like grocery sales, maybe not the best metric, or maybe it is. We can look at both. So that's what I've done here. So this is our original map. Here's the new map. Looks very different, right? Very different. All of a sudden, Florida, Texas, California, not my biggest states anymore. West Virginia, biggest state. North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi. On the old map, North Carolina was up there. Virginia was up there. Not the big ones are Florida, Texas, and California. So now all of a sudden I look at this and I'm like, I should probably be thinking about these states differently. Do I have opportunity to grow California? Looking at this map, you might say, well, we should probably focus on some of these other areas. Seems like California is doing well. Not as a percentage of their population as my trade area opportunity. Not even close. This one's way down on the spectrum. Okay. This is how you use this stuff. Now I open up a whole new list of questions, right? What's different about the trade areas? Are my consumers in California? Is my target consumer actually around these stores in California? What's the saturation level? Why in the heck is West Virginia and North Carolina so high on my list? What the heck is going on there? Right? Let's take this just a step further and look at it store by store, because this also gets really interesting. This is where you start to figure out what the differences are. So here on this, I know you can't really see it in the stream, but here we're looking at, on the left-hand side of this bar chart, you're looking at every store, every Lowe's store, all 1,700 and whatever of them, ranked 1 through 1,700 on total revenue production. Okay, so store number 1734 is my number one store on just total revenue produced. But it's number 458 when I normalize for population. Different, right? Look at this one. Store number 2714, and this one is in California, is number 9 on total revenue production, but it's 1655 when I normalize for population. What the heck? Lots of people in that trade area, tons of people in that trade area, and I'm not penetrating into it. There's only a few people in that trade area as a percentage basis actually buying my product. Why is that? Compare that to the one right above it, 2219, which is number 8 on total revenue production, and number 68 on the penetration number. That's what I want to happen, right? I want my big stores to be leveraging their population. That's a perfect world. The perfect world is these two charts are perfectly in sync with each other. That's never a reality for anybody. But now I can start to ask questions. Even if I just compare these two stores, I have a feeling I'm going to find some interesting stuff. The people in those trade areas are going to be different. My own activity in those stores might be different. Where's this one at? So this one's in Pennsylvania. So we're comparing a store in Pennsylvania to California. We're talking about Home Depot and Lowe's here. What drives Home Depot and Lowe's sales? New construction, new renovation, people moving into an area, right? You got to buy a bunch of stuff when you move, when you build. There's not a lot of building happening in California. Well, in some areas, right? Some areas are actually doing really well. But if you just watch the news would tell you, California is probably not a high population growth area right now. That may be a factor. It may not. Okay. But the point is, now you know And you can start asking that next layer of questions. If you're working with magnetic, we answer these really fast, right? We're pulling hundreds of data points into this to answer this. This is like just the tip of the iceberg. But if you don't have that type of infrastructure, you're not working with us, even this can change the way you do business. Okay. Let's hop forward here and look at this. So now think about taking this to Lowe's at your next quarterly business review, line review meetings. The next time you are in there trying to justify your product, negotiate merchandising partnerships, talking about inventory, talking about the things you're doing, how great your product is, why don't you bring them this data? Why don't you bring them and say, hey, I've got this group of stores that are doing really well. They are well penetrated into their trade area population. As a percentage of the population, they are rocking. They're like a bunch of people, like the high percentage of that trade area is actually purchasing our product. And guess what? They're all in the eastern half of the country. Why is that? Now, walking in that meeting, you should know. But just knowing this, just having this, you can start asking that question. What's different about the people in the trade area? What do they spend their money on? What's going differently about population growth and decline in these areas? Right? What am I doing? Is my marketing is my marketing more being more allocated to this area? Right? Am I doing all digital campaigns, and the algorithms, since they're getting lots of clicks, are pushing all my media to this area? That happens, and people don't know it. You can process your marketing data and figure this out. I can help you. Okay. Is that the fact? Are my sales team, is it just better in this area? Are they more seasoned reps? Are they responsible for fewer stores? Are they doing more in-store demonstrations? Are they just better demonstrators? Have we done a better job at creating relationships with the general managers in these areas, the category managers, the people who are responsible for this segment of the country? There's all kinds of things that can drive this, right? This is real data. This is actually a real example. And all those questions I just asked can be answered very quickly. But imagine being able to go to Lowe's and say, hey, here's the stores that are doing really well. This is what I'm trying to replicate across your entire system. Here's why it's happening. Now that I know why it's happening, I can go grab this other group of stores that's not doing so well and replicate that recipe and apply that recipe, replicate what I know works in these other stores. It may be something you can control, but it may not, right? You may find that these trade areas just are not conducive to high sales of my product. Well, then that opens up other questions. Should I be marketing in that area? Can I remove those areas of the country or those stores or those cities or whatever, however we decide to do it? Can I remove them from my marketing plan? What impact does that have? Because then I get to allocate those dollars to the areas where I can grow. All kinds of cool stuff happens, right? Inventory. Do I have out of stocks in these high growth, high opportunity stores that I can solve by removing some inventory from these low opportunity stores without like having to change my whole production line, right? It's just reallocating inventory better. You can't leave that up to the retailer. All kinds of cool stuff happens just with this one little tidbit of information. Okay. So, moral of the story, normalize your sales data for population. Don't do it the easy way. Do it the hard way. If you need help, DM me. And I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving. Take some time off. Thank you.